let's find the sitting bones. And that can be done either in, I'm in Siddhasana, which is Sage's pose. Now, there's a couple of ways to do it. You can start from Baddha Konasana if you want to open up your hips a little bit more. We can take Baddha Konasana, and I always hook my fingers underneath the shins and begin to lift my sternum up. So that starts to give me some nice traction, taking the arm bones down away from the ears and the neck. If you feel any pinching on your outer hips, you'll lift your knees. Right? And as you lift your knees, and if you want to try this with me, you can. If you lift your knees, you'll feel your inner groins release down, which will allow you to rotate forward with greater freedom. Now, once you get forward a little bit, keep the lift of your sternum and then release the legs out and down again. And notice if the pinching has gone away. You might be able to move yourself forward in the pelvic region a little bit better. Inhale, lift your knees. Exhale, draw back with the arms, coming forward a little bit more. If you feel as though your hands can now reach the floor, great. Otherwise, just keep using that support of your hands on your shins. And then release the legs out as you exhale. So in one sense, you can always use your breath, overlay it onto your practice. And I like to use it, generally speaking, in two ways. The first way is reinforcing the action of the pose on the inhalation and softening and letting go into the posture itself as I breathe out. So that the exhalation can be about creating space, and then you naturally float into it. The other way is focusing on an inhalation for an extension and an expansion. So if I now inhale, I lift the sternum, I take the side ribs up, I broaden out through the collarbones and the shoulder blades. And as I breathe out, I'll press the outer edges of my feet together, relax the inner groins, and I'll find myself moving slightly forward. So you never want to force anything, because then the body adjusts, making whatever adjustments it can to meet the goal of going forward. Inhale, come back up, right? And then lift one leg, extend the heel out, other leg up, extend the heel out, Dandasana. And then take the back of the knees once again, come into Baddha Konasana. Now, whatever leg tends to be dominant, I always tend to start with this leg. I'll lift it up and I'll point my foot. I'll support the ankle and lift my calf. And then I'll turn the shin bone towards the floor as the top of the foot turns towards the floor, and set it down onto the ground right in front of me. Now I'm sitting on blocks, which gives me a bit more stable of a platform, but if you're on a blanket, you need to be on the front edge. And then you take the other leg. All right, so as you reach through your heel, it's even. All right, so it's just like as if you're standing, you're not sickling your ankle out. Support the ankle, lift the calf, turn those up, the heel and the calf up towards the ceiling, and bring your shin down. So if your hips are more open, your knees are wider. If you're not quite so open in your hips, you might find that the heels are overlapping one another on the opposite side. Good. So let the pelvis tip forward like you did in Baddha Konasana a moment ago. And that might get those grounding sensations into your shins. All right, so as you root down through the buttock bones, down through the shins, inhale, lift up through your chest. All right, so the top of the feet, both of them are on the floor. They're not necessarily stacked up on top of the leg. So if this doesn't necessarily work for you, doesn't have to, you can always use Sukhasana with the opposite foot underneath the opposite knee, and you're more in the center of your platform, whatever that is, the blocks or the blankets. Right? So now, if you have a belt handy, that would be great. I know I didn't mention it before. Fatal teaching flaw, right? And take the belt between your hands and apply a little bit of pressure. Spin the triceps towards one another, so your arms are straight up. So this begins to challenge the lift of your chest. Now, have the hands shoulder height. If it begins to grip in the neck or the shoulders, you want to lower your hands a little bit. Right? And take your hands at least shoulder width apart. Descend the buttock bones down, reach out through the thighs, that's your grounding element. Exhale, inhale, raise your arms up. See if you can lift the back ribs and the front ribs equally. Outer arms forward, inner arms back, lengthen up through the back ribs, through the back of the arms, inhale. Descend the buttock bones and the shins and the thighs down as you exhale. Now, bend your left elbow and reach out through the right arm. So you might get a little bit more length on that left side. That's absolutely fine. But keep both buttock bones firmly planted. Inhale, take your arms up. Exhale, bend the right elbow. And you can let your arm be right next to the side of the head. So it's not as if you're attempting to move into Gomukhasana, taking the elbow behind the head. Inhale, come up. Exhale, go over. Now see if you can keep an isolated lift of the side ribs, because if you start doing a little bit of this, you're crashing down into the right side, right? So keep lifting through the right side. Inhale, come up. Exhale, go over. Keep breathing, reaffirming the grounding element of the legs and the sitting bones as you exhale, the lift of the chest and expansion of the chest as you inhale. Now taking the hands back up, exhale. Slowly lower the arms down and keep that tension on the belt. All right, so you can feel the inner arm going out and the outer arm containing towards the midline. Good. Let the belt go. Now, I like the reverse cross with Siddhasana because it always reminds me of twiddling my thumbs when I was a little kid. So I'm just taking this foot out slightly to nest the foot that was in front before out. Good. So again, if you feel as though there's more space available to you, you take your hands to your knees and draw the knees out wider and back. Take a slight rotation forward. If it's available to you, bring your hands to the floor. Notice how the shins are starting to ground down a bit better. Continue to reach the buttock bones back. You might feel that filling in of your abdomen towards the back of the pelvis. Walk your hands over to the right a little bit and keep a sense of extending back through this outer left hip. So you don't want to walk all the way over your right knee, especially if you're in Siddhasana. But if you're in Sukhasana with a simple cross, your chest is probably over your right knee and the hands are to either side of the knee. Now take your left hand and roll the outer left hip down. And just observe the sensations as you breathe in and breathe out that is created. Maybe there's more of an equanimity in these side ribs. And then walk yourself around now to your left side. So if you're in Siddhasana, you don't go over that knee, right? You stay pretty tight to a 45-degree angle. And then roll the outer right thigh down. And that sometimes takes us out of the twist, but play with it. Turn the ribs to the left. Inhale, lengthen up through the sternum, right? Get a sense of being evenly planted in those buttock bones. And then come back up. So having movement in the body without disturbing the foundation of the legs is so instrumental for advancing, deepening the postures, the standing postures especially. Now, to come out of this, lean back, lift the knees up, extend your legs out slowly if you have stiff knees. Otherwise, just extend them out, Dandasana. Now, you can rock your feet back and forth, maybe get a little bit more blood flow back in there. And then we can come to a Malasana position. So bring your heels back towards the blanket or the block as best you can. I'm going to rotate so you can see a little bit better. All right, so here now, if you have difficulty bending your knees, you wouldn't take your heels back in quite so much. You keep the feet slightly wider than your hips because you're going to have a different Malasana coming forward, nesting the side ribs into the inner thighs. And then say those of us that can get the heels all the way back. All right? So if you can, ground the heels down, hands to the front shins, everyone. Inhale, lift up through your sternum. If your knees are not fully bent, you're going to take your side ribs between the inner thighs. Otherwise, what we're looking to do is with the feet together, have the bottom front ribs hook up and over towards the kneecaps. Let the elbows be slightly away from the body so you do not necessarily have this tight fist-like containment. You always want to broaden out through the upper chest. And then inhale and release. And now see if you can take your right leg back into Virasana. Now you don't have to. Those who don't bend, no worries, don't do it yet. All right? So I'm going to have to rotate again so you see what I mean. All right? So for those of you that are not bendy knee people, what I want you to do is take your Baddha Konasana like before, soles of the feet together. Right? Lift one knee, that right knee, and then take your right knee out to the side. So the sole of the foot is touching the top of the right thigh. That's for the non-bendy people. Otherwise, you are here. Now, those of you still wondering, what am I doing with this other leg? All right. So either here or you're here. We're all turning to the right. Those of us with this nice deep knee bend, you're taking opposite shin with the left hand. All right, so the right knee is bent. So you want to turn towards the bent leg. I'm sorry, the left leg. Hold on. All right, so now I'm doing what you're doing. Okay. So, Faith, you can just stay where you're at. Anybody else? Okay, everybody else has a bent knee. Good. You're golden, Marianne. That's it. Now, opposite hand, opposite shin, turn towards your bent leg. Right? Now, so for those of you that have your leg out to the side, you're turning towards the left. Turn towards the left. Right hand, left knee. Inhale, lift. Exhale, turn. Now, if you can't quite reach the floor, you want to reach back behind you as if to reach for the top of your thigh and just turn. Scoop the abdomen in and up. You'll feel your grounding element come in. Right? Now, for those of you that are very easy, so you want to turn towards your bent knee. So Lisa, turn towards the left. There you go. Now, if you can go further with your twist, extend your right arm all the way up. Hook your elbow on the outer right knee. And as if to do downward dogs, spread the fingers. Press your knee into your elbow, elbow into your knee. Keep turning until you find a tight spot somewhere in that rib cage. And just breathe, right? So you're either like this or like this, turning to your left. All right, so turn to your left, Marianne. You want to turn left. There you go. Exhale and unwind. Bring that right leg out in front, Baddha Konasana. All right, so I know some of you went to the right with the leg, so we'll try and reconvene on round two. So now take your left knee up. Your left foot is either going to go out to the side for tight knee people, or you're going to take it into Virasana for bendy people. Bring that right knee up. Foot plants evenly on the floor. Inhale, lift your chest, broaden out through the collarbones. Right? Now, if your knee is up towards the ceiling, you have opposite hand, opposite knee, so your left hand on your right shin. Take your right arm behind and turn toward your bent leg. If your knee is out to the side, right? This is a little bit more of a Bharadwajasana twist as opposed to a Mauritiasana 3 or Ardha Matsyendrasana. Right? So you're turning in this regard. Now, scoop your abdomen towards the back of the pelvis. Feel the back body descend down and the buttock bones ground. Inhale, lift up through your chest. Exhale, turn. Inhale, lengthen up. Exhale, turn. So find something that's challenging with regards to this twist. Maybe it's the intercostal muscles in this back left section. All right? Maybe it's a tight hip or a tight thigh. So enroll that area, reach through the left thigh and retract the left thigh back, right? If you're in Ardha Matsyendrasana like, reach the left arm up now, hook the elbow on the opposite knee and turn a little bit more. Knee into elbow, elbow into knee. So that's an action that can clarify the opening. And then exhale and release. Open that right knee up into Baddha Konasana. If it's bent, come back into your Baddha Konasana. Hold the base of the shins. Inhale, lift your chest. Take a few breaths here and notice if you feel a little taller from pubis to top of sternum. Lift the knees, rotate forward. Release the legs out. Lift the knees, inhale, come forward. Fingertips to the ground if you got that far. And then release the legs out. You can continue that process if you have more rotation available to you. But again, it's about keeping the length on the front body. If you start to draw the navel back or drop the sternum down, that's not productive, right? You need to pass through this tightness on the back of the pelvis first. So that should give us a little bit more pliability now to move into some of the other poses. Start with your original cross-legged position, whether it's Siddhasana, Sukhasana, and just notice the ease in which you have cultivated for yourself to sit upright now. It's always good to go back to square one, because then you have a comparative and you can see how far you've come. So now let us take child's pose, and we're going to create a bolster for ourselves. If you have a bolster, use a bolster, right? Now, you may want to, if your knees don't bend too well, or if you don't fold very easily in your hips, have the blocks up higher at the medium height rather than the low height. But most of us should be able to, if your knees bend, be able to work with this lower block. Now, my blanket fold is, for those of you that know shoulder balance, it's a shoulder balance fold in half. So it's a long fold of the blanket, and you put one just over both of them. Now, my knees come in about 3 inches or so from the edge of that first block. This is going to support my chest, this block. This is going to support my head. Now, the second blanket, folded in the same way, is going to come on to the top of the thighs. And if you have a third blanket or a sandbag, you can leave that blanket behind you here. Right? So you have a little bit of extra weight. Otherwise, we'll just make do. Right? So bring the blanket up over the top of the thigh. Press the heels of the hands down. Your knees are to either side of the blocks here. And then rotate forward and let your chest be supported by the first block, your head the second. Turn your head to the side. And then if you have that third blanket, take it onto the back of the pelvis. And everybody now take your hands to the back of the pelvis and smooth the buttock flesh down towards the floor. And then release your arms out to the side so that they are pushing up in towards your neck. Right? So typically, one side of the neck is tighter than the other. So as I look to the right, I observe. Turn to the left, observe. Now, sometimes it's equal. Make sure your shoulder blades are moving away from the neck, not by the muscular action, but by positioning your arms in such a way that you have space here. Take a few breaths, allow the blanket to push up into your abdomen as you breathe in, and the abdomen expands down into the blanket. After your next exhalation, lift the chest slightly off of the blanket so you can keep the buttock bones back, extend out a little bit more, and turn your head in the opposite direction. Settle the buttock flesh down. Let the weight of the blanket, if you have a blanket there, release, right? Release down. So you're starting to get a little traction in the lower lumbar region by the position of the chest out and the reach of the buttock bones back. Now, if this is not your tighter side, turn your head back in the other direction. Take a few more breaths here. Allow yourself to drape over the supports beneath you. If you have a blanket on the back of the pelvis, you can let it slide off or push it off out of the way. And then extend your arms out as if to do a active child's pose now. Inhale, come up onto your hands and knees. Have this bolster that you made pretty much start right at the front of the thighs, and your knees are beneath your hips. And then position your hands 6 to 8 inches in front of the line of the armpit. So you can see here's the line of my armpit, and I have my heel of hand a little bit further forward. Now, if your head happens to gently ground into the blanket, that's going to assist in quieting the mind. But we have to understand that it's still a matter of reaching back through the buttock bones and taking the legs from the front to the back. The arms stay straight. So it's almost as if you still have that belt between your hands, right? So to get more grounding in the hand, you want to stretch through the fingers. Firm the outer forearm towards one another, spin the triceps towards one another. And if you have not come up already, let the abdomen go towards the back of the pelvis, giving yourself a little bit of lightness. Take a bent leg downward dog and let your head hang. If you already feel pressure of your head into your neck, take one of the blankets away. Otherwise, continue to stretch the arms out through the fingertips as you drive the outer hips back, and then lift your front thighs up towards the buttock bones, and take the front of the leg towards the back of the leg, reaching evenly through the inner and outer heels. And lo and behold, there's a happy accident going on because my heels are grounding into the blanket behind me. It just happened. So you use this to your advantage. So if you are herniated in the neck, it's a gentle support in the head to the blanket. If you are healthy in your neck, draw your chin towards your chest and let the crown of the head take weight. But again, you have to keep the arms straight, buttock bones lifting. See if you can even out the action of the pose. Again, if you need to come down and rest in child's pose. All of us are not at the same level of strength in the arms or the legs, but if you're still here, begin to cultivate a sense of lifting up through the inner arms and inner groins as you inhale, stretching through the arms, taking the front of the leg towards the back of the leg as you exhale. And then find your way down to child's pose on an exhalation. Now this is set up to where we can actually work with Virasana. So if your knees don't bend too well, this might be high enough for you to actually take your heels to either side of the block, right? So the block is here. My heels are to either side. You can see how the edge of the block is behind the ankle. And then with the knees together, take your calf flesh away from the knee and sit onto your support. All right, so for those of us that are able to go down lower, it's just a nice place to be initially. And you can take away support incrementally. All right, so I find that this is a good place, very quiet place for my legs. So I'm going to incrementally take away a blanket so that I can notice any subtlety of disturbance and how I'm keeping the equal reach on inner and outer ankle. Okay. Now, if you are now able to go even lower, I invite you to take that blanket that remains over your calves, because we're going to compress the calf a little bit. Right? The knees are together. The feet are pointed straight back. If you need a block for support, it's there. But pretty much what you're going to find is that the blankets are going to give you a little bit more palpation into the calf. Non-bending knee people, you can use 2 blankets. See if that works for you. All right. Now what I find is that it allows me to sit a little deeper. So if your knees are happy here, there's no undue overstretch in the quads, take this block away and simply sit down onto the blanket, which is now compressing your calf. So there is something to be said for stretching your calves. It does give your feet more support. So for those of us that suffer with various imbalances in the feet, the Achilles, that area, working with your calves can do a lot to give you more freedom of movement in the feet. All right. Now inhale, come up. For those of us that don't need support for our knees, take the blanket away and now just sit down in between the heels of the feet. So if there's still peace in the legs, I invite you to lean back, ground the shins down, lengthen the sternum up, take the shoulder blades into the back body and straighten your arms. So you're elevated in a way. You're not quite as dropped in the buttock bones. And then as you bend your elbows, you may find that the buttock bones drop down. Come back any amount. Maybe find an ability to get the forearms to the floor. Now, if your block is still back here, this is another one of those happy accidents. I'm just going to turn it up to support my shoulder blades. So if you have your block nearby and you can maneuver it underneath your shoulder blades, do so. Take your hands to the base of the skull, reach out through the front thighs, lengthen the elbows up and out, and then cascade over that block. So you're supporting your head, you're reaching your elbows out. Use the action of grounding through the thighs, grounding out and down through the shins, pressing the toes down to support the base of the pose. Reach the elbows, lengthen the sternum out. Feel the length and opening in the front body. And to come out, keep one hand on your head, tuck the chin towards the chest, lifting your head with your hand. Take one hand behind you into the floor and press down into the hand on the floor to inhale and come up. And sit peacefully with the hands on the thighs. So if there's no peace in the body, you have to adjust. Come forward onto your hands and knees and release the legs slowly, maybe with a subtle bend of the knee initially, rolling over the toes, extending the heel back. Do this several times until you feel an ease of movement, an ease of opening in the back of the leg. And take all the props off of the mat. Have them nearby in case you need to use them. All right. Stretch through the fingertips, iron out the palms, spin the triceps towards one another, and lift up through the front thigh. Keep the knees bent. Let your knees go back and forth gently just to create a sense of opening and drop of the thigh bone out of the hip socket. Lift the pelvis with the action of the abdomen towards the back of the pelvis. So it's never really to round the spine, per se, when you take your abdomen up. It's mostly to fill it in, so you feel a sense of stability in your SI joints. Now, if you can, reach the calf down and back through the heel as the hamstring lifts up through the buttock bones. Stay here 3 to 7 breaths, depending on your level of strength in your arms. Keep an eye on the inner and outer heel. Make sure they're going back directly. Now, remember the belt. Can you feel a sense of containment where your inner arms are going out as your outer arms are going in? Stretch through the fingertips, lift those front thighs, reach back through the heels. Exhale into your child's pose, your normal child's pose, where the knees are slightly wider than the hips. Now bring your hands beneath your shoulders. Inhale, come up and sit down in Baddha Konasana with no props. Right? So to be right on your buttock bones, you need to have a certain distance of your heels to your groins. So if you're tucking under with the navel towards the spine and you're not really on your buttock bones, you have to take your feet further away before finding that just right spot. Take your hands back behind, stretch the fingertips back behind you, lift the side ribs forward and up. Now when you do use a fingertip action in the hand, make sure that there's a nice subtle rounding in the fingers so that you are not collapsing in the digits of the hand. So for instance, if I press too hard into this coaster and I start to jam the digits, that's going to stop the transference of action, support, energy up through the hand. But if I have a nice cup here, as if there's a tennis ball underneath my hand, or if you've ever played piano or learned typing, that's the same idea. And then you'll feel the action go up through the forearm. So that's the general idea when you use your fingertips. Sometimes that's not available. You can always press the knuckles down, but keep the wrists open, right? So that's how we can use the intelligence of how we place our hands on the ground to give us more support. Bring your left knee up, and everyone now take the top of your thigh into the right foot. Right? Turn towards the right. Frame your hands equally on the edges of your mat. Lengthen that left leg back, and then roll the outer left hip forward and down. Now, if you know pigeon pose, you're going to need to take your right knee back further so it's in line with your right hand. All right, stretch back through your left leg. Slide the left leg back until the heel of the right foot nests in the inner hip point. Now, you stop at any time, especially if your hips and your knees are not receiving this well. Right? So you could always feel the stretch in the front thigh with just having your leg like this because of the turn of the pelvis, right? Get that stretch. Reach for the leg. Now, if you want to challenge yourself more, you can press the top of the foot down and lift your knee. Right? Exhale, lie down over the leg, your right leg, and you can take your forearms to the floor or you can lie down completely. I never really stretch the arms out personally because what happens is there's an imbalance. That right hip drops to the floor. You want your hips level from the floor, and as you draw your outer right hip back, it should feel as though you get an opportunity to extend evenly out from the hips towards the end of the mat towards your hands. And then come back into that position. Left thigh, sole of right foot. You just retract it back and then take Baddha Konasana once again. Lean to your left now, letting the outer edge of that left thigh come down, and then bring your right thigh into the knee. Inhale, lift up through your chest. Exhale, turn to the left now, framing your hands equidistant from the outside of the mat. And maybe you get a nice twist here on your way out. Then if you're going further, right, you're going to lengthen that right leg out. Press into your hands to move the left knee more in line with the left wrist if you're going more into a classic pigeon. Otherwise, just stay here and continue to reach out through that right leg. Roll the outer right hip forward and down. Stretch back through your right leg so that you can get closer to the ground with your pelvis. And then bring your forearms to the ground. So this is all sequential. If you don't hit that box, that checklist of getting into the left knee in front of the left hand, all right, you should stay just upright, all right, and work on this extension of the back leg first. Good. So see if you can now go a little deeper, elbows out to the side, draw your outer left hip back, outer right hip forward and down. So the hips are level to the floor and level in line with the edge of your mat. So this is a more progressive way, like sequential way of getting into pigeon pose rather than just swinging your leg forward in downward dog. So you might find some opening or some potential for opening here that you pass through too quickly when you do that more traditional right knee to the right hand, extend the left leg back for pigeon pose. Slowly roll back onto that left sitting bone. Retract the right knee back in toward your foot. Sweep the knee up, out, and over for one last Baddha Konasana. Lift and open your chest. Feel the expansiveness. Breathe in and create more expansiveness. Good. Now, sit in an easy cross, Sukhasana. Now, take your left foot into the back of the right knee. Take your right foot more in line with the left knee and let that shin come towards the floor, all right? And that comes with a forward rotation in the pelvis. So some of us may still have the knee up. In that case, you embrace the knee, pull back on the shin, lift up through the chest. If it's very open for you in the hips, so to give you a little bit more of an angled view, okay? The outward rotation of the legs occurs almost naturally just by the position of your legs. But you need to drop the pit of the groin down to allow for a forward rotation. If you feel no resistance in this hip, begin to come out a little further, just like we did in pigeon pose. Scrub the hands back, reach the sternum out, lift up through the chest. Breathe, relax those lips. I always know when people are focusing too hard when I see a lot of this, right? And then walk yourself back up. Find that easy cross. Lift the right knee, take the heel of the foot into the opposite knee. So do you find that you have a little bit more support when you're reaching this heel into the leg? So as it comes down, my heel is reaching into the back of the thigh. It never compresses the knee. Lifting up, inhale. Drop the thighs down, so the heels of the hands can sometimes help you with that. The thighs drop down in the hip socket, rotate forward. Bring your hands to the floor if it's available to you. Scrub the hands back, lift the sternum up, inhale. And then exhale and notice if space occurs in those areas of tightness. Gaze softly, head is in line with the spine. My chin typically resides up with these Zoom classes because I'm looking at all of you. See if you can come a little further out. And then inhale and slowly come up. Extend both legs out. Dandasana. And now have a block handy. We're going to do bridge pose. When we lie down, the advantage of having your legs bent is the pelvis is always given an opportunity to lengthen and ground. So right now, come all the way down to the ground. Bring the block between the inner thighs. Bring your feet closer so that ideally you're touching the back of your heel. So when you use the block, it's never on the knee joint. In this case, it's not all the way up into the pelvis. Squeeze your block and draw your abdomen down towards the floor.
There's a sense of containment. As you squeeze the block, you might even feel that reference point of the inner knees drawing towards the inner groins. One arm at a time, spin the triceps more underneath the arm towards the midline. Grab your mat, stretch your arms out. And now, as you exhale, press into your feet and reach the thighs out of the hip socket. You'll feel a sense of lifting the hips from that movement of the legs out. So it isn't just a heave-ho from the buttock action. Inhale, take your sternum towards your chin. Feel how you can roll more onto the whole plate of the shoulder blade. Exhale, lower back down. Now, if your back receives blocks reasonably well, I invite you to put a block underneath, otherwise don't. So take the block from the knees, put it in a low position and underneath the whole back of the pelvis. So again, if you have sensitivities in your low back, don't put a block there. Now bring the feet to touch and then draw your right knee up towards your chest. Extend the left heel out along the floor. Firm the left thigh down, draw your right knee towards your chest. So the block, basically, it challenges the front left thigh a little bit more. Broaden the collarbones, broaden the shoulder blades, reach for those elbows. See how much space you can get. Now the key with the block is you'll know when you're tipping too much with that pelvis. If there's too much action of the pubic bone towards the navel, you have to let the knee come away from your chest so you feel the whole back body, the whole back of the pelvis is grounding into something. And that applies with the floor too. Exhale, release your right foot back down to the floor, bend both knees. Second side, take your left knee in towards your chest. Sternum towards the chin, just like bridge pose. Exhale, lengthen the right heel out along the floor. Let the right leg get you, in a way, more level on that block or on the floor. Firm the right thigh down, then bring the knee in towards the chest. Inhale, expand out, broadening. Exhale, grounding. And then release the left foot down to the floor, bend the right knee, press into the floor if you have a block and lift your hips up and take that block out. And now let's do one more round with the block between the thighs. See if you get a little bit more freedom of movement of those thighs out of your hips. Grab the outer edges of the mat. Take the triceps more directly into the floor. Exhale, press your heels down, squeeze the block, and lengthen the thighs out towards the knees, towards the line of the toes. Now this time, if you're able, turn the arms even more and press the back of the arms down, lifting the side ribs up. Press the feet down, lengthen the thighs out. Make sure the chin is moving away from the sternum instead of being caught up in the movement of the legs towards the knees, the legs towards the toes. Exhale, release down one vertebra at a time. And release the block. Now you might need a belt. In fact, everybody get a belt. We'll do a couple things here. So take the belt up onto the arch of the foot. Have the belt a little bit closer to the heel than not, and hold the belt. One hand gets a little bit of the belt. So if your right leg can straighten to the point where the heel's over the hip, that's great. If it doesn't, you're here. But with straight arms, you have less muscular action and more just the action of position. Now, with the leg up in the air, I want you to press the ball mounds of the feet up and see if you can enroll the thigh coming back into the hip. So you're grounded like you were on the block or on the floor a moment ago. Drag the left heel out, straighten that left leg out along the floor. Supta Padangusthasana, position 1. Right? Firm your right thigh, reach up through the heel. If you can now, bring the toes a little closer towards the line of your shoulders, your head, but keep a sense of reaching up through the heel and down through the back of the hip. If your hands are hurting, you're using your hands too much to drag the leg towards your face. And then exhale, release the foot away from the face and switch out. So you're taking your left foot up into the belt, the right foot onto the floor, knee bent. Get that nice position going where you feel the back of the pelvis grounding as you draw your left thigh down, extend up through the ball mounds of the left foot, and then slide the right heel out along the floor. Inhale, bring the toes a little closer toward your head. You might not have much room to take any of this position, but what's nice is you're just encouraging the foot to move a little further towards that head. And then release the foot back to your start position. Take the right foot up into the belt, and then bring your left foot to the floor, knee bent. This time, hold the belt in your right hand. Now, if you do have a lot of difficulty with your hand, do remember you can wrap the belt around your wrist and hold both ends of the belt so that the brunt of the action is shared both by the back of the hand and by the fingers. Slide the left heel out. Keep grounded in the back of the pelvis. Inhale, take your knee, your foot, your elbow towards the head, and then exhale, spin the right thigh to the right to take the right leg out. Now, if your elbow is bent, it just means you need to get further out toward your foot because you want that positional support, not a muscular support. As you reach your right heel out, draw your right thigh bone into the hip socket. Turn your ribs to the left to help keep both shoulder blades on the ground. Breathe. Reaffirm the action of the pose as you breathe in. Let go as you breathe out. Now bend your right knee and put your right heel anywhere on the top of your left thigh. Hold the belt in your left hand. So as I point my right foot, I get a platform where I can pull the belt towards my shoulder, and it gives me an action, a binding, of being able to release this right thigh out of the hip a little bit more. You can even take your right hand to the top of the right thigh and encourage it to move out. So the left hand is holding the belt, pulling the foot up towards your opposite hip, and the right hand is supporting that bent leg, that thigh, to reach out. So if you don't necessarily go all the way out and be parallel to the floor, that's fine. You still get an opportunity to leverage the thigh out of the hip socket. And then take the belt off of the foot and let your right foot just slide back down alongside the left, and notice how you feel in the floor. Bend both knees. Take that left foot up into the belt. Now I have a couch to my left, so I have to reposition. So I'm just simply going to spin around on my mat here. Find a place where you can have a straight left arm, straight left leg, and then begin to extend the right leg by dragging the heel out along the floor. Breathe. So keep the left foot up, but straighten the right leg out along the floor. There you go. Firm the right thigh down. Retract your left arm so you feel grounding in the back of that hip. With each additional inhalation, the sternum comes towards the chin, the right leg moves out of the hip socket. With each additional exhalation, the thigh of the right leg grounds down, the left hip grounds down with the action of the thigh down towards the floor. Now exhale, spin the left thigh out to the left and take your left foot out. Turn the ribs to the right to counter that action. So if you start to feel light on that right side, You can turn the ribs. If that's still not working for you, extend your right arm out and lift the left foot a little higher off of the floor. So you're not completely tipping over here. Breathe. Draw your abdomen to fill in the lower back. Extend through the legs. And then bend the left knee and bring your left heel to the top of the thigh anywhere and transfer now your hand to the belt, your right hand to the belt, and let this left leg be in a place where it feels like it's lengthening out of the hip. So point your left foot, pull the belt up towards your right shoulder, reach the left thigh out. If you want to, you can smooth the skin on the top of that left thigh, encouraging the bone to move out as you pull up with the belt in your foot. So in the full position, you're getting yourself into a half lotus with your left leg. Take a breath in, lengthening sternum towards the chin, reaching your right heel away. And then exhale, take the belt off the foot and slide your foot out along the floor. Now, if for any reason your pelvis is not happy here, it's not releasing, bend the knees, take your feet as wide as the mat. You can take your arms up overhead here. If that strains your shoulders, take them out into a T like Warrior Two. Now let the knees fall to the left. Reach out through the top of the right thigh. Keep your abdomen drawing back. So your feet are as wide as the mat. They need to be as wide as the mat to let this work your front thighs and your front hips. Otherwise, it's just a very easy twist. And then inhale, bring your knees up and over to the right side. Reach out through the top of the left thigh. Keep your abdomen drawing back. Inhale, bring the knees up. Exhale, go over to the left again. Now, if your right knee is touching your left foot, just take your left foot on top of that knee, and it'll assist in lengthening your right thigh out of your hip even more. Stretch out through the arms. Release down into the pelvis. Take that left foot off of the right knee. Inhale, come up. Exhale, knees over to the other side. Let the knees go all the way out. If you're touching your right foot now with your left knee, hook the foot on top of the opposite knee. Lengthen out through the left thigh. Take the abdomen down towards the floor. So you're not arcing in this lower back and not compressing. Take the foot off the top knee. Bring your knees back up. Center your hips. Center your trunk. Center your head in the middle of the mat. And now either let your knees fall towards one another, or if it's available to you, straighten the legs out along the floor. Release completely by following your breath. As you breathe in, observe the movements of expansion in your body. As you breathe out, observe the letting go. A longer exhalation will bring you more quickly into a relaxed state. For those of you that know the Ujjayi breath, you can bring in that sound very much like yawning with your mouth closed. As you lie here, see if you can, without strain to the ears, the eyes, or the throat, see if you can bring in a very long, full, deep breath in, a gentle pause, and a slightly longer exhalation.
Continue that pattern. Sometimes it's called out with a 4-count breath in, a 2-count pause, and a 6-count breath out. Let the sound of the Ujjayi breath capture the mind. Let the sensations of the breath soothe the body, quiet the mind. Wiggle your fingers and toes. Bend your knees, gently rock from side to side. Roll completely to your right and lie heavy. Using your arms, come up to a comfortable seated position. As you breathe in, lift and open your chest. As you breathe out, root down through the sitting bones, the legs, palms together in front of your heart. Bow your head from the nape of the neck. Gazing softly at the floor, open your eyes, looking outwards. Namaste. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. It's like perfect California weather.